Hello, I'm Jonathan Moyes, Head of Investment Research at Wealth Club, and today I'm with Hugo Lough of Mercia Ventures to talk about their Northern VCTs. Hello Hugo, welcome to the studio. So we're here to talk about the Northern VCTs. Firstly, what are they? What makes them different? And why should investors consider them?
Yeah, thank you for having me along. The Northern VCTs have been in existence since 1995, so we're one of the oldest VCTs in the market. We are now an investment team of 11, supported by about the same number of operational staff, and we are investing up and down the country. We have offices local to a lot of our entrepreneurs in some of the major hubs, such as Newcastle, Leeds, Bristol, Manchester, and London, and we invest in software, consumer, life science, and some IP-rich businesses, sometimes called deep tech.
What sort of companies do you like to back within the VCTs?
We like to back businesses that are either early stage with a huge amount of promise, so the life science businesses typically fall into that type of category. And we also like to back slightly more mature businesses. The consumer businesses that we've invested in tend to look a little bit larger, and software as well, but software sort of splits across both of those. So we have a really nice blend of either slightly more mature businesses with very capable, well-formed management teams, or early stage businesses with a huge amount of potential.
So the VCTs they're more of a generalist rather than a sector specialist, would you say?
As a team, we sit across specific verticals. So myself, I head up consumer and also invest in software. So we have people within each of those verticals who focus on those either wholly or as sort of two sectors. So whilst we have a broad approach, I would say that we're actually relatively specialized within those. Another example is that individuals within the team have areas of specialisms based on either interest or experience. So again, I focus on insurtech. I have a colleague who looks at cyber, another colleague who looks at climate tech. So that gives us a bit of an edge when we're looking into those areas. So yeah, a broad remit, but with a bit of a specialist approach.
Okay. So I guess a large enough team that you can have specialists within that team.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yeah, that's right.
So turning to recent investments, do you have any examples of recent investments you've made?
Yes, I'll talk about three, which will highlight the approach that we take in terms of the sort of broad spectrum. So the first is a business called Promethean Power Schools. Promethean would fall into the deep tech camp. They are a manufacturer of MOFs, MOFs, which stands for Metal Organic Frameworks.
Okay.
MOFs are a really interesting compound with quite unique characteristics, and one of those is that they're highly porous, so they're very good for splitting gases. So a gram of MOF would have the equivalent surface area of a football pitch, which becomes really interesting in things like carbon capture, which is clearly a massive challenge. So we invested in that earlier this year alongside Aramco Ventures. The thing that Promethean do particularly well is they enable manufacture of MOFs at a significantly reduced cost and greater scale than is currently available. It's a picks and shovels play within that. So there are other companies who've developed the specific use cases, but unless you're able to manufacture at a sufficiently low cost, it's prohibitive. So we're hugely excited by the potential of that business. Another is Heidi, who are the UK's third largest skiing holiday booking platform. They've grown very quickly. They're only a few years old, started by two brothers in Bristol. So again, back to that local point, we have a team there who'd foster the relationship. And what Heidi do well in the area of the market that they serve is for more flexible bookings. So if you want to go for a week, Crystals is still the dominant player. If you want to go for 2, 3, 4 days, have a bit more flexibility, then Heidi have a fantastic offering, a wonderful UX, and a great customer support team who help to just delight their customers. Their Trustpilot score is very high. I think it's 4.8, and they are growing really quickly. We're very excited about the potential there as well. And then the last that I'll touch on is Semble. So that's a software business that sell to private healthcare providers. There is a massive problem with efficiency in that space and with sort of admin overhead, I suppose. Semble have a product that touches on various areas that effectively free up clinicians' time. So the focus to date has been on sort of SME end, GPs or private practices, but they're increasingly moving into enterprise, and they're also expanding into France. So that was a slightly larger business. It was actually a Series B that we led. Octopus Ventures came in with a smaller check alongside us. And they have a very capable management team who have previously run and exited a business. So I guess across those three, that sort of is indicative almost of how we think about building our portfolio. We have a slightly larger, more mature business. We have an early stage one with huge application in Promethean, and then we have Heidi, which is very fast growing, but again of decent scale.
So I guess 3 different sectors there and 3 different stages.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah.
Okay. So Hugo, how do you find these investments? And I guess more importantly, once you've found them, how do you win them? And is there anything about Mercia that maybe makes that process a little easier?
Yeah, so we find the deals via a number of channels. There is the advisor channel, so via corporate finance houses. Then I think the 2 channels in which we have historically done really well when we look at the deals we've actually done, those tend to come from referrals from non-executives who we've worked with previously and from seed funds who we have also co-invested with. I think that speaks to sort of how we behave with businesses, that those who know us tend to be our best referrers. I think that's indicative of sort of how we approach things and the collaborative way in which we work. In terms of winning deals, I mentioned at the start, because we have people who look at specific areas, we'll often have somebody in the team who has an area of expertise, which can be really helpful. The other thing that we have, and we often and leverage upon quite extensively, is Nucleus, which is centralized hub, I suppose, of support. We're able to do that because of the scale of Mercia Ventures. So bringing people into deals who have really relevant experience, I guess to bring this to life, on Heidi, there were 3 non-executives who came in alongside us as part of the deal, all of whom had really relevant experience in the scaling challenges that Heidi specifically would face. So we think very carefully about the challenges that the business that we're hoping to invest in will face, and work proactively to bring people alongside us who can help on that.
That's very interesting. And so I guess turning back to the portfolio and looking at some of the more established holdings in the portfolio, are there any particular highlights there? Any examples?
I think one overarching comment is that no single asset is more than about 4% of NAV. So we have a very diversified portfolio. We don't have any particular one that's sort of holding up NAV, as it were. But I guess picking the 2 largest by NAV, there's Pure Pet Food, which is a dog food business, direct to consumer. They have had some fantastic growth recently. We've supported them in a number of ways on that. And in testament to that, the business recently raised a large growth round with Felix Capital, and they continue to really impress. So really excited by what they're achieving. The other, which is actually also a consumer business, is Currentbody. That's been in the portfolio a little bit longer, and again, just continues to grow really strongly. They have introduced their own brand products very effectively, and revenues are scaling north of 100 million. So yeah, both performing very well. But as I mentioned, it's a sort of very balanced portfolio,
quite diverse.
Yeah.
So turning to how you help, I guess you touched on it earlier. What do you do practically to help some of these companies succeed? Do you get involved with the companies, or do you just leave the management to it?
No, we do get involved. I mean, fundamentally, we're backing management in all of these businesses. And of the deals I mentioned earlier, Promethean, Heidi and Semble, all of those had fantastic management teams. So it's something we look for when we invest. But we certainly roll up our sleeves and get involved. So Nucleus, which I mentioned earlier, is effectively that centralized resource. But practically, there are a few things I think we do. So a kind of hygiene factor one, I suppose, is helping them to structure their board. It's often a business that hasn't formalized that. So we will think really carefully again about what's the skill set that's required to help this business go from where we are today to where we want to get to. That dynamically shifts over the course of a business's life cycle. So we're constantly thinking about board composition and helping them to recruit the best people. The other thing that we do is we work really hard to facilitate knowledge sharing across the portfolio. And we also have 2 growth partners who are retained by us, one of whom has a background, he's a CMO of a B2B software business, so understands all of the go-to-market challenges. He can come in and do mini audits and help businesses with understanding sort of some of their challenges and opportunities. The other is a Utah-based individual who previously ran his own business and was a CFO. So he helps with finance team composition, but also in US expansion and running through a kind of readiness playbook before businesses expand to the US. And those 2 growth partners are one of the key areas in facilitating that cross-portfolio knowledge sharing. So they'll host CMO sessions or CFO sessions. We found that to be really valuable.
Yeah. So a number of levers then that you can pull potentially to help some of these companies.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I guess the ultimate goal is to then successfully exit a business. So turning 2 exits, I think it's fair to say it's been a reasonably quiet period for exits across venture capital. How's it been for your portfolio?
Yeah, that's right. It's been more challenging at a macro level for sure. And I think one of the things that we have done effectively over the past couple of years is we have managed to sort of sell some of the larger assets in our portfolio. I know a year ago, my colleague Peter was sat here talking about an Evotic sale. So we've got some of the deferred proceeds from that coming through. And then the largest holding that we had after that was a business called Gentronics, which Peter actually also spoke to last year. So we successfully sold that earlier this year for a 4.5 times return. We have a number of businesses that are at the early stages of their exit processes, working with corporate finance. So we're really confident in the stream of exits coming along that we need. But it's certainly been a more challenging environment.
And I guess turning to risks, investing at an early stage is risky. How risky is investing in the Northern VCTs? And is there anything you can do to help manage some of these risks?
Yeah, it certainly is risky, investing at early stage. I've mentioned it a couple of times, but the composition of the portfolio is very carefully managed. So thinking about risk via effectively sort of 2 lenses. One is, what are the sectors that we're exposed to, not becoming excessively exposed to, for instance, early stage life science, which has a very different company profile, I suppose. So managing the exposure across those 4, and then the kind of horizontal lens is scale, and ensuring that we're investing in companies where we have really exciting opportunities, but balancing those with companies where there's perhaps a smidge less execution risk. And I think that the deals that we've done over the course of this year, I've mentioned 3, but there's a number of others, that's really a reflection of that sort of risk management, I would say.
Interesting. And I guess we touched on it. The environment has been pretty tough for the past 2 years, but how does the environment look today? If you could get out your crystal ball, what does the environment look like for venture capital now?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we're always optimists. We're realists, but we're optimists. There are businesses appearing today that are just doing such interesting things. And that won't stop. And so we will always want to continue to back individuals doing extraordinary things. My colleague led an investment into a business that's just come out of stealth called Wobble Genomics, and Wobble have just announced the results of some initial testing, which looks hugely interesting, and it, if it sort of got all the way through, would enable testing of early stage breast cancers off a kind of small amount of blood rather than the current process, which is a lot more intrusive. That type of technology, that type of opportunity is just so extraordinary. We'll always sort of continue to back those businesses and to want to invest in amazing entrepreneurs. AI, which we've got quite far along the interview without mentioning, is certainly looming out there as an opportunity and as a threat to some businesses. So we'll certainly look to invest along, those types of lines as well. It doesn't feel more risky than it's been previously. I think there's always great opportunities to back fantastic people who are delighting their customers. That's what we love to do.
Oh, very good. And so finally, to sum up, Hugo, for those that want to invest in a VCT this year, why should they invest in the Northern VCTs?
I think they should invest in the Northern VCTs because we have a fantastic diversified portfolio with lots of exciting businesses, but no one business that's sort of holding us up, which I think is really attractive. We have a good train of exits coming down the line, and we have a really good stable team of people who've been together for a good few years, and all of those things I think will be translating into good dividend payments in the coming years.
Very good. Hugo Lough of Mercia Ventures, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
If you're watching on YouTube, please press like and subscribe to the channel for more.